Tim Westwood has appeared in court charged with sexual offences against 7 women.
Shoplifting that may seem a casual theft is one of the big costs to retailers.
At least 8 people have died and 1.4 million have been forced to evacuate.
Ukrainian engineers are working to restore power supplies after a sustained Russian drone and missile attack.
Unlicensed waste disposal could end up costing you more than you expect.
7 people have been killed after a UPS cargo plane crashed.
So this morning I was flicking through YouTube and a chap I follow called Knoxhill came on with a different thing. He normally does reactions to music and stuff like that. He's a rapper, but he's been on a rock journey and it's been really interesting to watch. But something he's often really open about is his own mental health struggles that he's had in the past and where he's at as a family man and, you know, in the music industry, which is renowned for being very pressuring on mental health at the best of times. But something he was talking about this morning was something that I've often thought about, and it is that sort of phenomenon there is these days of doom scrolling, which is the idea that you're flicking through and just taking all this information and really not doing much. And we all do it. I do it. I get guilty of doing this myself, and it's really unhealthy. And I want to sort of dive into that and really explore this phenomenon in this world. And the reason it's really stood out to me is actually that I keep hearing about the fact that we're in this mental health crisis, and I've talked about it, and so many of us have experienced our own mental health issues, myself included. I've been very open about that. I've talked about that. Knoxhill clearly is in the same boat, and a lot of the people I talk to will be very open about their own mental health struggles. But why is it so prevalent today? Why do we live in a society that is so much more anxious? And I question that. Are we really more anxious as a society? And you relate that back to times gone past. You know, we're living through the Second World War, or the First World War must have been incredibly stressful as the bombs are going off next to you, and it's must be what so many people in war-stricken countries experience. Must be a level of stress beyond what we experience here. And yet here we are in this mental health crisis. And why are we in that? And something that Knoxhill said, which really got me thinking, was the fact that we expose ourselves so much to social media. It controls so many elements of our society these days. And I think at the core of that is that it's not, you know, we've spoken before about AI and the dangers that are in that, and the fact that it can be very sycophantic. Social media is in itself sycophantic. The way social media companies make their money is by keeping you on their platform, because that way you see their ads. The longer you're on their platform, the more of their ads you see, and therefore the more money they make. It's all about the almighty dollar, pound, euro, whatever. That's what they do. So what they create is an algorithm that knows what you're interested in and feeds you stuff that you're interested in. Now, that inherently isn't bad. What if you've got the wrong idea about something? But what happens, that algorithm sees that you're watching stuff maybe on a conspiracy theory, and, you know, some conspiracies might be true. I'm not judging anyone for being a conspiracy theorist. But there are obviously some which are dangerous and which aren't true. And we've seen this in world events of recent times.
But a new study has said that Instagram, the popular social network owned by Facebook, is recommending misinformation to its users. Over a 2-month period, Instagram recommended more than 100 posts which contain misinformation about a variety of topics. And this is all down to Instagram's algorithm.
But if you're looking at wellness or things which are about health more generally, it starts feeding you anti-vax content. And once you're hooked on the anti-vax content, so the specific account that was following anti-vaxxers, they were being fed QAnon, white supremacy, election misinformation in the US, really serious stuff.
We've seen this in shootings and stabbings, and so much of what colours our world at the moment.
Says part of the problem lies in social media. The internet provides potentially dangerous people endless articles on violence. It also allows them to interact with other possibly violent people.
And the exposure that children and adolescents have to social media is a powerful driving force. Predatory behavior can sometimes happen when depression and other psychological factors are present which fuel that belief system.
The social media algorithm then recognizes that you're watching that and feeds you more of the same information. Now, I saw this happen on YouTube, interestingly. I'd seen one video which I was interested in seeing, and I didn't know who the chap was. He was an interviewer, he was a podcaster. I can't remember what it was he was interviewing. It was just something that piqued my interest. Oh, that's interesting. And as it fed it to me, it was an interesting thing to watch, but it turns out this chap is very, very right-wing, has some quite racist views, I've discovered since. But it started feeding me. I discovered this since because it kept feeding me more of his stuff. That's a very simple example, but as more of his stuff came up, I started to see this pattern of, hang on, I don't agree with a lot of what this guy's saying, and not watching any more of his stuff, it's not for me. It's a really difficult thing to navigate because what's happening is we're being fed so much of this information, and it's deliberately focusing on that information that we are interested in. And so it starts to cement these views in our heads. When we start seeing maybe opposing views to what our own are, it starts to affect us. We feel angry or we feel wronged. And we go down this rabbit hole of misinformation based on what we're being fed. And I think we've got a world that's so segregated at the moment. There's so many different, people are so different in so many ways. And it alienates people by their views. And so you're either on one side of the fence or the other. There's very little room these days for middle of the ground. It was interesting because I had a response to a video I'd done. This chap had come on with these views about a political right-wing view, and he accused me of being very left-wing, which I thought was, I've always considered myself to be quite middle of the road, and people who know me well will probably agree with that. But based on some of the content I put up on here and information I provided, I guess some of those left-leaning things might have come across, and that's what he's picked up on. I was really interested at that response, and my immediate thing was, I want to respond to this. And I thought, thankfully I took the time to think, you know what, it's just going to end up with me being angry and cross with this guy, and he's going to respond. It's going to go nowhere. What's the point? And I think that was probably a healthy way for me to go. The thing that really got me as I started thinking about this is that we're in a society today that is different from any other in history. What I'm getting at is that we have technology at such an advanced level compared to, I think I was told once that our technological knowledge doubles every year at the moment. The amount of information and the amount of knowledge, the amount of gadgets and computers and the power of computers and AI and all this stuff, it all builds up into this thing. And that knowledge that we're gaining is doubling every year based on the fact that we're learning at such an incredible rate. What that's done is open up borders in a way that we've never had before. And what I mean by that is that I remember during the Falklands War, I was very young, and my dad and my stepmom, we were staying in a caravan, and they gathering around the TV when the news came on so that they could take on board what was going on in the Falklands. And my stepmother said to me once, you should be watching this, it's history in the making. And I think I was 7, 8, it was like, I wanted to be outside playing, and I had no interest in it at that point. So in that time, that information, it had to be filmed, it had to be communicated, it had to be sent to editing and sent to the broadcasters, and then it had to be distributed from there. If you're lucky, it would make it into the papers the next day. Now, the second something happens, people pull out their phones, it's instantly on social media, it's instantly with news sources and journalists and TV stations, and it's instantly processed. We don't have that wait period. It creates this level of anxiety in me that I've started to recognize, because there's so much going on in the world that I wouldn't have heard about in previous times. Because we get it so instantly now, it creates an anxiety instantly in me. I discovered this during COVID from a family. One of the things that I discovered with what was happening with COVID was that Everyone was isolating, everyone was shielding, everyone was staying in their, little cliques because they had to. And we were all glued on what was happening and trying to find out what's happening in the news. And everyone was stressed. We all knew this disease was out there, and it kind of felt like Armageddon or end times, didn't it? It was like, this is just going way out of control, and we were all scared. What I noticed was that because it was on the TV so much, and because my daughter was flicking through it on the phone, I was flicking through it on my phone, my wife was flicking through it on her phone, because that information was just bombarding us, my anxiety, the anxiety of all of us, was increasing and increasing and increasing. And it came to the point that I said, you know what, we need to stop. And we made a rule that there was no news in the house, except for maybe once a day, so we could check up on anything that was really important, especially given that we needed to know what was happening and whether we were still isolating and all that kind of stuff. The mood in the house almost instantly elevated. Everyone felt more positive and more happy. We weren't getting bombarded with this negativity. And I once heard a chap who was an editor of a paper. He was giving a talk, and he opened with a question. And the question was this: as my job as the editor of a newspaper, what would you say my job is? And the usual sort of answers, we would be journalistic and show integrity, be unbiased, reflect the truth, and people, things that you'd expect. And he said, well, actually, all those things are important. But the truth is, my job as the editor of a newspaper is to sell newspapers. And I will put on the front page of that paper whatever it takes to get you, when you're going past the news shop, to go and get your newspaper and buy it because you're interested. That headline will be something that grabs you and you feel you have to read. And we see that with clickbait, don't we, these days? It's the same thing. People put something on there so that you click through to it instantly because you have to see it. And then they get their revenue from the ads, and it all builds in this ever-growing snowball of misinformation, I guess, or information. His job is to sell newspapers. He will put on that front page whatever it takes for you to buy it. And that's what happens with media. That's what happens with social media. People will put in their titles, people will put in their, comments even, things that make you read it and make you react. And in fact, social media platforms use things called bots. And these bots, they're not human, they're AI essentially, but they'll often respond. They have these things out there because it might put a comment on your post and you'll get annoyed by that comment and you'll respond, and then it'll respond back, and it goes nowhere. Arguments on social media go nowhere, especially if you're not even arguing with a human being and you don't know it's not a human being. It's using AI technology that's allowing it to just communicate, and it's doing it because that keeps you on the platform. It keeps you focused on your phone, on your tablet, whatever, consuming their goods that they need to keep you on there because they make the advertising money. And that's how it works. So they will use whatever techniques they can to keep you engaged. If that's a bot responding, fine. That's what they'll do. And you won't know the difference. We live in such a divided society at the moment, and it comes across because it's in every bit of news that we consume. I was flicking through my phone this morning, just seeing the headlines of the day, and everything on there was negative. There was absolutely nothing positive to take in. It was all about wars. It was all about environmental tragedy and disasters and the looming death of society, essentially. Everything on there was really dark. Like I say, it was either about wars, or it was about people who've been attacked, or people who are criminals, or mistakes that have been made. When was the last time you read anything that was, this guy did a really good thing today? I can tell you the only thing I've read this week that was positive was the chap on the train stabbing who acted like a hero, basically. His colleague going, I don't deserve any of the credit. I did what I had to do, but he was in the thick of it. That's the only piece of positivity that I've come across. Something that I've heard it said, the Last Leg talk about it quite often, the TV show The Last Leg. They say when you see these tragedies occur and these horrific things happening, look for the good that's going on as well. Look for the people who are doing good stuff, who are actually doing something positive out of this negativity. And it really makes a difference to how we feel about things sometimes. Look for the heroes, look for the people that might be digging somebody out of the rubble, or somebody who stepped in, or somebody who just went out and raised a whole lot of money to support something, you know, the people who are on the ground providing medical aid and things like that. We consume at such a rapid rate now, and it's so instant and it's so in your face. When you combine that with greed, which is essentially what it is, it's a vicious mix. And it leads to this society that is just so built up with anxiety and fear that we have this mental health crisis erupting, and I feel it in myself. There are times that I look at who's in control and I'm scared. It's because I'm being fed certain information. The algorithms know the articles that I've read before or the shows that I've watched. All this information, all this privacy information that's out there and being gathered is all being used under the guise of, yeah, it's used to give you ads that are more relevant to you. But it's not just giving you ads that are relevant to you. It's trying to get you engaged through sycophantic feeding of information to you that you will absorb. And it creates these divides and no one wins. I wanted to share that, and I really want to thank Knox Hill for being very raw and open on that. I'll tag his video in the description and you can see the whole thing. It was fantastic, and I've actually reached out to him. And Knox, if you happen to be watching this and you see this, please reach out. I'd love to interview you on this stuff. I have been fascinated by your journey and how you deal with things like mental health and stuff through music and a lot of the stuff that I love. I would really love to engage with you on that. Please, if any of you know him, just tag him, tag him in comments, get him to respond. I want him on this channel. I think it would be a magic interview to have. Thank you for joining me. If you could, please just go and hit like, subscribe. It just gets the message out there. I don't make money off this. It's purely that the best way that you can support getting this message out is to share this, get this information out, like, subscribe. It just all means that these algorithms pick up on it and start pushing it elsewhere. I will see you again on the next episode. In the meantime, please do stay safe.